All right, so today we are going to study Bloomberg's portfolio function. There's a few things we want to do in here. So we'll start off with you got to build a portfolio in Excel. I'm going to show you how to do that. Then we'll go into Bloomberg. And the first function we'll use is BBU. That's where you actually load your Excel portfolio in the Bloomberg. We'll then go into BRTU, which is Bloomberg portfolio. That's where we'll be able to see the portfolio and start doing analysis. We're also going to do UNCL. I'll show you on that one. You might not need that one, but the reason I'm using that is it's really important for us that we monitor which sectors we're allocated to, but we're using sector ETFs, and Bloomberg doesn't know how to classify those. And so we're going to tell Bloomberg, take the energy ETF and put it in the energy sectors. So we'll do that. And then we'll also look at just the Bloomberg analysis. There's a few tricks we're going to talk about, which is one is we'll be using the B500, which is Bloomberg's index for the S&P 500. We can't actually use the S&P 500. We don't have that contract, but Bloomberg has these substitute indices that we can use. So these are the things that we'll go into. The first one is on building your own portfolio. Here's how I have it set up. There's one thing I might change in the future, and we'll see as I learn through it, but I start off with the security ID that gives you start with the ticker. So this is Illinois Toolworks and US equity. So you start off with the ticker. You have your position, which is, there's two ways Bloomberg will do it. They'll do it as percentage of the portfolio or the number of shares. Number of shares makes the most sense for us. So we're going to put this position as number of shares. The date is the date of the portfolio. So I'm going to assume we started this portfolio on May 29th, 2025. I could make it 12/31/2024. I'm going to give a test name. So I'm going to call it BBU test 2. And I'm going to copy that all the way down. I want that portfolio name everywhere. The nice thing about this is if you keep that portfolio name as you add more and more transactions, the BBU function is much faster because it only has to update for the changes. If nothing changed, it doesn't change. It's a lot faster. You don't need the security name, but I put that in there for my benefit so I can see what it is. What else might I add to this? The one other thing I'm looking into, and we'll see, is cost. What did I spend to buy this security? I'm not doing that. Bloomberg is essentially going to assume the end of the day price on that date that you have. So if something changes, it's going to assume there's something called VWAP, which is the average price throughout the day. To me, it makes more sense that I put the actual transaction price that I did on that day, but I haven't tested that yet. Now, one thing to notice here, so these are the titles that you probably want. The first four you really need. There's a few others, and you'll see when we load it in BBU, all the choices that there are. So you can look through those choices and say, hey, I'd like that to be in my portfolio. But you need this. Now you notice my date is 5/29. So there's two ways Bloomberg does this. There's the holding approach and there's the transaction approach. I'm using the holding approach. It's much easier. The transaction approach I haven't quite fully learned yet. So what the holding approach does, the trick here is something I learned very quickly, is every date that I have for the portfolio, I load the entire portfolio. So here you can see 5/29, there's my portfolio. So I copied that entire portfolio and I did a trade on 6/2. So you can see I still own 101 shares of ITW, but I added 23 shares of ECL. That's on the 2nd. I did some other trades in there as well. On the 10th, I added some SHW and CVX and put those in there. On the 10th, I did some more transactions. On the 20th, I did some. On the 26th, I did some. So I'm going to copy that entire portfolio and paste it down. And let's say we did a trade on 7/15. I'm going to copy that down. Let's say I'm going to insert a row right here. And I'm going to say, hey, let's say I bought some Walmart. WMT. let's say about 50 shares. That's my consumer staples. So let's say I got rid of some of my consumer staples. That goes down to 1,700. But this is the key, is I don't just put in my transactions that I bought 50 shares of Walmart and sold 70 shares of the consumer staples. You repeat your entire portfolio. So it's a little bit of a nuisance that you have to copy the entire portfolio and just put in the changes, but this is the holding approach and it works really, really well. So I have my portfolio, I have my portfolio test. I'm now going to save this file in a directory. I can find it. I'm going to call this portfolio video so I can find it and I'll save that. And so now I have that portfolio in my drive, portfolio video. So now I'm going to go into Bloomberg. And the first thing we're going to do on Bloomberg, you can see I've been using some of these already. The first thing we're going to do is BBU. That's the uploader. And what you can do with the uploader, it's pretty cool. You can just take your file in the directory and actually just bring it over. So I click on the file and I just hit the word upload. So this is one I did before. This is my prior portfolio. Here's one it's doing. It's saying converting here for a while. So there you got ready to map. And so if you click on that, so it's going to ask you about your file. So my portfolio is in sheet 1. That's correct. My header line is in line 1. That's where I had, if you look back at the file itself, my titles are in line 1. And my data starts in line 2. And so that's really all I can do there is I got to say, okay, everything's in sheet 1. And then my titles are line 1 and my data starts in line 2. You don't do anything other than that here. You just say next. And so here's where you're going to tell it what each of these columns mean. So this title up here is not Bloomberg. It's what's in my Excel file. So I'm going to say, okay, this first column is security ID. So I just click on that. The second column is position. Here you see it says position quantity. They also have position weight. We're doing quantity. It just makes a lot more sense to me. The next one is date. So we'll do date. You got to find date. There it is right there, date. Portfolio name, very, very important. So find portfolio name. They don't have them in the order I would expect them to be. So you have to look through and they're not alphabetical. There's portfolio name. Security name, I'm going to skip that. This stuff over here was that stuff I was typing for the class, so you can skip that. So you just skip that. So you have everything lined up, and then you just say next. There's really nothing to do here, so you can ignore this and just say next, and then finish. All right, so now we have a portfolio. And so we finished with BBU. The next thing we're going to do is PRTU, which is the portfolio function, portfolio administration, PRTU. I click on that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to find our portfolio. So here's our portfolio, BB. Remember, sometimes I get confused between the file name. So the file name is portfolio video, but our portfolio name is BBU test 2. That's what you're going to be looking for. So BBU test 2, I brought that in, and here's our portfolio. So we have our portfolio, and it's all lined up. Everything's there. You can see here, it's only showing, what it fits on one page. So there's a lot of stuff here. But if we do analyze, you click on analyze, it'll bring up an entire new box. And this is where it's going to do the analysis of your portfolio. So it brings your portfolio in. So here's our portfolio. All right, so we're looking for an indice here. We can't, where I'm doing this from, we don't have access to the S&P 500. That's an extra cost. So I'm going to do browse all. And I'm going to look under indices. I'm going to type B500. That's a indice created by Bloomberg that maps the S&P 500. I'm going to select that. That becomes my benchmark. And then classification, you see it's using GIC sectors. But you notice not classified has all of my ETFs. I want to classify basic materials to be in the materials sector and energy to be in the energy sector. So how do I change that? And so we're going to actually go back to Bloomberg and we're going to do something that if you need this kind of reclassification, we can reclassify it. It's called UNCL. It's the unclassified. Do sectors, equity, GIC sectors. It should be this one right here. You can see these other ones. I'm got to be careful which one you do. Should be this one. Yes, so that's what you want. If you pick the right one, it will say GIC sectors and will list all of the sectors. All right, so here's something I learned in doing this. When I first tried this, I would fix a couple of them, test it, and it looked like it was really working. And then I go to the other ones and ignore the other ones. And so what I've discovered is when you make this change, you have to fix all of them at once. Let me show you how you fix them. So look back at our portfolio. So you notice here's the things that are not classified. If you right click on that, you can change the display. It says modify secure display. And what we want is ID 059. And so we want to update these. And so I'll go back to the analysis one where it showed all these unclassified. So we're just going to go in. We have to take each one of these and put them in the correct sector. So the first one, if you hover over it, you'll see that it's telecommunications. If I right click, I can copy it. I now go back to the Bloomberg UNCL. Telecommunications is now communication services. If I click on that and right click and edit rules, the first thing we want to do is add the sector, equity, GICs, sectors, sector level 1, and hit the plus sign. And then we want to click on fields and we type that ID 059. You can just hit enter, you find that. And then you go over to the add and right click and put paste and add. And now it's added the telecommunication. This is the actual ID 059 field for the ETF for telecommunications. It's now been added to this. So you close and that one's now been adjusted and you do each one in order. The lesson I learned here was you have to do all of them and then hit save. When you save it, you just save as, give it a name. What I discovered, if I do one or two and test it and then come back and do the others and save it again, it doesn't work the second time. So you really do have to add all of them each time. I don't want to do that in this video because it takes quite a while to do. I'll do one more just as a test. Let's do consumer discretionary. So I click on that, right click, edit the rules, do sector, equity, get sectors, level 1, hit the plus sign, then go over the fields and type ID 059, hit enter, click on that, and then we'll go back to the Bloomberg portfolio, or I'm sorry, to the Bloomberg analysis, and we'll find consumer discretionary. There it is, consumer discretionary. I'm going to right click on that and copy, and then go back to the UNCL. And I'm going to paste that and add. And I now have two of them updated. So you have to do that for all of these. We're doing this for sector ETFs. It's possible maybe you're using an ADR or some international stock that's not classified in GICs for some reason. You could add that in as well. I do think the challenge I've had, because I've gone back and forth with Bloomberg, that if you add a new one, like let's say instead of using BlackRock ETFs, you want to use State Street ETFs, sector ETFs, and you want to add those, you're probably going to have to start off from scratch and do this entire thing and add all of them. So just be aware of that. I have not figured out, and Bloomberg itself couldn't figure it out. They tried back and forth. And the final solution we had is each time you do this, You have to adjust every single one of these, and then you do save as and give it a name. I'm going to call it test 5 or something. I've done so many of these, and you save it. So I don't recommend what I just did here. You need to do all of them. I already have one where I've done all of them. So I have that advantage. So I'm going to go back to my analysis. And right here where it says classification, instead of gig sectors, I'm going to click on that and I'm going to browse all. When you browse all, you'll go down and see custom. And below custom, you'll see your name. And then you got to find the one that you're doing. I know it's the first one I'm up here is called BBG GTC for ETF, but I've created so many of these, I need to find some way to delete the old ones, but I'll select that one. And then you apply. And now you see I don't have any unclassified. Now, one thing to be really careful on here is we have our benchmark B500 and we have the sector ETF classifications. So we got the sector classification, including the ETFs. So the problem is every time you load this, every time you click on this, you're going to have to update those. So it's really important to actually save your workspace and give it a name. I'm going to call it UTSA port or something, and then just call it UTSA, but some way so that you can easily find it. Otherwise, every time you do this, you're going to have to change the benchmark and change the sector. So here we have our portfolio loaded. And here are all the type of analysis that you can do up here on top, your positions. You notice when you do that, my benchmark's missing. So you have to do the same thing again, add your benchmark. I'm going to do indices. I'm going to search for B500 and add that one. And I'm missing my sector classification. I'm going to browse all. Go down and find custom. Ronald Sweet. Go down and pick mine, select, and then I have to apply. And again, just like I mentioned in previous pages, it's a little frustrating, but now I've got my benchmark. Now I have my sectors. That's why you want to save the workspace. So make sure you save the workspace. If you don't save the workspace, every time you click on that button, like if I go back to intraday, it's still showing the S&P, the B500 and my sector. But if I did not save the workspace, every time I click back and forth, it's going to lose those. You have to add them again. So there's other things you can do in here. You have to get used to the different buttons and what each one is telling you. It does give you tracking error. It gives you performance. It gives you your return versus the benchmark. It'll tell you why your return was better. Was it because of your sectors that you were in? Maybe you're overweighted technology when technology is doing right. Was it your security selection? We're using it for that. We want to know who our biggest contributors were, who added the most, who hurt us the most. And so in each one of these pages, there's different information. That's it. Now you notice I'm still learning. So I'm learning how to use each one of these different things. You can see the portfolio I built had some errors in it because it's just a test file. So I'll get better at that. I can now do a lot of attribution on my portfolio and be able to build pitch books or explain my performance to whoever is monitoring my performance. All right, so that's my first video. As I get better at this, I'll do some updated portfolio videos so you can see what I've learned over time. Thanks a lot.